All right, guys. Eric Paulzini with 95 Sports. Going to be getting into the PGA Championship outright bets, first round leader bets, showdown picks. That kind of goes hand in hand with the first round leader bets. And we're also going to be talking about ownership leverage. But part of that is going to be going over the weather split. So just looking at it right now, the weather is very interesting, especially for Thursday. Right now, it's only looking like there's going to be a 5-mile-per-hour difference between the AM and the PM split, okay? So as a whole, it's not that big. And right now, what I'm seeing is that the biggest winds, that sustained winds that we're projected to see is like 17-mile-per-hour winds. Really, it's like when it gets over 15-mile-per-hour winds is when it starts to make a big difference in terms of scoring. Yes, like 10-mile-per-hour to 15-mile-per-hour does have a slight difference in scoring, but really, once it starts to get over 15-mile-per-hour winds, that's when it starts to get huge. And I should say the gusts are expected to be greater in that PM wave than they are in the morning wave. So logically speaking, it does make a lot of sense to target those golfers in the morning tee times for first round leader bets, which kind of is always the assumption, and then showdown as well, which is kind of always the assumption. Once again, the first round leader and the showdown picks are going to go hand in hand, okay? If they're a strong first round leader pick, they're going to be a strong showdown pick in round one. But first, I want to get into the ownership leverage. Let's talk about that. So I have it pulled up here for you guys. And the thing about ownership leverage, and kind of the reason why I came out with this tool and why it's been really successful, is it really gauges like if a player is overvalued or undervalued. And that was the biggest problem with ownership for many years, is that it was kind of a scapegoat for people. It's like, oh, he's too high owned, or like, oh, I have to play him because he's under owned. It's like, no, like, is he a good player or not? Then you can think about playing him. Or like, if he's a bad player and he's chalk, like, you can't play him. This is a good gauge of like, can you play him or not? Okay, so really, it's when a player starts to get into the red, like Joaquin Niemann this week, that starts to make sense to fade him. And this is pretty much exactly the same ranking that he had last week at this time. And I want to bring that up. Last week, at the start of the week, Sam Burns, Taylor Gooch, Will Zalatoris, they were all really strong plays at their price point. And then, they missed a cut on the number. But as the week went on, their ownership started to get too high. So their leverage rank as a play really started to get to this threshold where it's like, man, it's just tough to play them. So for me, I only had like one of those players in my builds. And that's why I want to come out with this video for you guys, because I want to give you the best information to be successful. It sucks when like the Monday video changes as much as it did last week, I guess, in terms of like, these are the players that are my core plays and going on my way to play. I just want to give you guys the most information to succeed pretty much. And that's where like playing Xander last week made a lot more sense, because he was under-owned and a better play, really. He was just priced up a little bit more than Neiman, then Willie Z, and then Sam Burns. So I just want to give you guys that information to succeed. So just looking at it right now, I'm going to sort by leverage rank, or show you guys the golfers that are the best leverage rank players. Obviously, Paul Casey, Sunjam, not in the field. So what are we looking at? Victor Hovland, and this really shocked me, honestly, for two reasons. One, he has that AMT time split. And two, I'll show you guys real quick here. Just in general, he's projected to get off to a hot start. Okay, he is really good for first round leader rank, and also he has the ties to Oklahoma. Like, I thought coming into this week, Victor Hovland was going to be chalk, and I do kind of expect this to get corrected. But as it sits right now, he is the best leverage rank player, and as you guys can see, third best pick in the 95 mile this week. I mean, that is absolutely insane. He's like 10% lower owned than some of the players around him. That is crazy. I love that. Okay, so we can easily get him at 9.9 this week. That's not too much. And then just looking at John Rahm, Colin Morikawa, DJ, like the theme this week is that a lot more people are going like fair and balanced with their lineup approach, which makes a lot of sense. Okay, it does make a lot of sense in a major. With the soft price points, you can really make strong builds by doing fair and balanced. But that's really leaving some really good leverage for the top end players. And it's not too hard for us to imagine Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Colin Morikawa, DJ going off and dominating, okay? And that is the interesting thing here. That's what I really like to see. Bryson, pretty low owned as well. And the one thing I hate is like Brooks Koepka casually popping up here as well in terms of leverage rank. Like, you get some really strong leverage on him. Billy Horschel still really, his ownership is getting up there a little bit more, but I'm pretty shocked here. I thought he was going to be the chalk dog this week because it's just maybe it's the PM split. I don't really know, but just as price point, he is the standout play this week. And I mean, this is shocking here, guys. Only 8% ownership, and around 13 percent, or he's got a leverage rank of 13th, which is really good. So lots of opportunity there. And I talk about this a lot. Like a player like Billy Horschel this week at that price point, it's just a correct play. Not only does he have the upside, but he's also been very consistent. 4 straight make cuts at the PGA Championship, one of the longest active cut streaks on the tour. And he's come close to winning a bunch. And so this makes me sad. This does. Okay. Cameron Young is pretty much an easy fade this week. And I do hate this because Cameron Young, a lot of people know this. Pretty much 9 to 5 is half the reason that the DFS community loves him. Okay. We talked him up really before he became Cameron Young, I guess. And Cameron Young is the reason Cameron Young's getting talked up. But notice him first. I don't want to say first, but notice him before a lot of people did. The general public did, which kind of makes me sad that he's getting talked up this much. And I think it is because while he's a really strong staff fit, good recent form, but I do want to point out that I think the logic behind Cameron Young being chalk doesn't align or doesn't really make much sense, because you look at someone like Davis Riley, who 4 out of his last 6 starts on the PGA Tour have been top 10 finishes. It's kind of the same logic behind Cameron Young being chalk. And don't get me wrong, Cameron Young, really strong play individually, but at 7.6 to be pretty much the highest owned player on the slate, it kind of doesn't make sense. And once again, I do love him as a player and overall as a play, but he struggled at the Masters. This should be a better track for him once again. It just doesn't really make sense to play him when you can get pretty much the exact same plays as him, just at the same price point, just a lot lower owned. Okay, so that's kind of the issue with Cameron Young as a play, and I'll touch on that in a second here as well. But Jason Day, Jason Day been playing much better golf. It actually does make sense that he's, I guess 4% isn't that high, but the long-term data doesn't like him, but still, that's kind of why he's ranking out poorly. Matt Fitzpatrick, kind of same thing. It's like you look at the other players around his price point range. He shouldn't be that chalky. Not a terrible play, but still, he's kind of at that leverage rank where it just doesn't really make sense to go out of your way to play him. Same thing with someone like Joaquin Niemann. Tony Finau's getting there. Abraham Manser getting there. Jordan is very interesting to me because, you don't have to play him. He is a solid play this week, but just in general, not someone you need to go out of your way to play. And then we're starting to get into these like 30 or so. Like these are golfers where, they're not too high owned to the point where you don't have to play them. But really once it starts to get into this like 40s, that's when I start to really pay attention to it, okay? And that's where it starts to really add up. See if there's anyone a little bit lower down, because obviously the lower you go down in the price point, the worse the players are going to get. And so the worse they're going to rank out leverage-wise because they're just bad plays. So yeah, no one really else popping up. Gary Woodland, I guess. Taylor Gooch, I guess. Still not terrible. Tony Finau, kind of interesting there as well. But let's kind of show you guys why some of those players there are not as good at plays. So let's just look at it. Tony Finau, Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors a little bit better play. Like Louis Oosthuizen, just as good of a play. You got someone like Adam Scott, slightly better play than like Matt Fitzpatrick, Tony Finau, Cameron Young. And then you look at someone like Keegan Bradley, slightly better play than Cameron Young. Tommy Fleetwood, slightly better play than Cameron Young. You can keep going down that list. And that's kind of where the difference starts to add up. It's like some of the times the players shouldn't be chalk that are. And most of the time where they've been this overvalued like this, it hasn't worked out. Okay, so now that we got that taken care of, I just want to give you guys the best information to make educated decisions is really what I'm trying to get to here. Okay. So we're going to transition into the betting side of it. So just looking at first round leaders. So what we want to focus on are going to be the players that have that morning tee time here. And I guess that's a little bit blown up, but we want to focus on those golfers that do have that morning tee time. So looking at it right now, we can see the top 3 golfers that are most likely to have the first round lead. And guys, this, I know most of you guys know this, but this too has been very accurate in terms of hitting a first round leader. Pretty much if you locked in the top 10 for first round leader for round 1, you're hitting a first round leader like 60, I think, forget what it was, but it's over 60% of the weeks, which is obviously pretty good. It's really easy to give yourself a chance to hit a first round leader as well. The problem comes with the dead heat reductions. Okay. And that's kind of the issue. But what we want to look at is just the players that had that morning tee time. So like Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Cantlay, and John Rahm, the first three most likely to have the first round lead are just out of here. Okay, so after that, we can see someone like Cameron Smith has that morning tee time. He would make a lot of sense as a first round leader bet. We can see someone like Victor Hovland. He has that morning tee time. It would make a lot of sense to bet him as a first round leader. And now let me just look at like Russell Henley. Let's make sure he has that morning tee time. Russell Henley does not have a morning tee time, so he is not someone we're going to be playing there first round leader wise. Okay, so this is kind of just what you got to do. You got to go down the list and see which players had that morning tee time. I know Cameron Young does. Cameron Young is going to be a pretty popular name, I think, for first round leader. That's because he's been dominant in the first round. So this is kind of the way you got to go about doing it. So like Hideki has a morning tee time. Should be a strong play for you. Xander Schauffele has a morning tee time. Should be a strong play for you there. But as you can see, like a lot of the top names here for a first round leader have that PM tee time. And maybe tomorrow for the books that have like a low round of the day, maybe tomorrow you go back to some of these players here that are, that we wish were popping up more. I do want to point out like Mito Pereira as well, because factoring in just morning tee times, he's like I think it was top 11. And that's the thing. Mito last week was a much better first-round leader bet than Sebastian Munoz, who ended up having the first-round lead. And that's kind of the thing with Mito, is that he has been a really strong first-round leader bet this whole year, and he just hasn't gotten it yet. So how crazy would that be if someone like Mito Pereira finally came through and had that first-round lead this week? That'd be pretty awesome. I mean, he's been really strong in first-round scoring, and obviously that's why he's ranking out pretty well. So 28th in general, I mean, that's pretty strong there as a whole. Let's see any other names popping up there that are kind of interesting. So what I want to call out is that if we are doing like showdown picks, like someone like Chris Kirk, who he has fallen off a lot. He really has fallen off a lot in terms of just how well he's been playing. So I think a lot of the first round leader scoring is still coming from earlier on in the year when he was playing really well. So Warren there, but still. As price point on Showdown, I noticed that I was ending up on him a decent amount, and then I was also ending up on Mito a decent amount. Just give him their price point, okay? Obviously, birdies are going to be huge. That's kind of what you want to be shooting for there. And then someone like Sebastian Munoz, pretty decent as well, 45th at his price point, especially for at least the Showdown purposes. It makes a lot of sense. Obviously, I don't think he's going to go back-to-back first-round leader. Like last week, he was okay, but last week, I think he was like, if you took out the withdrawals, he was like 28th in first round leader rank. And then if you had done just AMT times, he would have been, I think it was 13th or so. So not terrible, but that's kind of part of the process, is that a lot of times you have to factor in, is there a weather advantage? Is there a course advantage? And it does seem like there's going to be a AMT time advantage. So real quick, let's just talk about my favorite outright bets, and then we'll be getting out of here. So I'm going to go back into the PGA dashboard here for you guys. Going to zoom out a little bit more so we can see this better. All right, so here we go. So my favorite outright bets here, I'm just going to give you guys a few. I do really like Victor Hovland. He does make a lot of sense as an outright bet, I think, this week. Third best pick in the 9 to 5 mile. Really strong specialist, which actually shocked me. Obviously, he's an Oklahoma boy. Been playing some pretty good golf, really minus the Zurich and then the Masters. Prior to that, had been playing some pretty good golf. And maybe that's what's worrying people, is that his recent form has fallen off a little bit. And that could be the worry. I noticed some of his quotes were that he took some time off, about 3 weeks off of golf, kind of just need to mentally reset. So I do kind of feel good about him as a pick. As we can see, made the cut in his first 2 PGA championships. I do think he's a strong play. And then going from there, I am kind of targeting a little bit of the AM side. But as we saw with the Players' Championship, all it takes is one little weather delay. It was a big weather delay, and that shifts the whole dynamic of the tournament. So I want to point this out, because had you done, let's just say, the top 4 picks or outright bets for the Players' Championship in each wave, Cameron Smith would have ended up on your betting card for that PM wave split. So I do want to just call that out. Like, you could easily do the top 4 outright bets for the AM split, and then you could also do the top 4 outright bets for the PM split. But once again, I pointed this out already. Some of the best plays this week are in that PM split. And that's kind of the struggle, which also could be huge for you guys in DFS by targeting the AM PM split if that does end up being the weather advantage, because, well, they're going to be a little bit under-owned because they're just not as good of plays. Okay, so I do want to call out Xander Schauffele here as a pick. We can see really strong lately, guys. So 5th, 1st, didn't play well at the Masters, kind of struggled there. 35th, 12th, 13th, 3rd. So really strong across the board this week. Really just top 20 or top 30 or so in all the key metrics that we're looking at. And I do wish there was a little bit more upside, I guess, there with him. But we can see pretty strong at the PGA Championship. Missed the cut on the number last year. But 10th the year before that, 16th the year before that, 35th the year before that. So, yeah, just a really strong play there for Xander Schauffele. It does seem like he is someone where it does seem like he's due for a major, obviously. And then I do want to call out Hideki. I feel like this is everyone's favorite pick because he has just been so good. You take out his withdrawal at the Valero Texas Open, his recent form goes 13th, 14th, 20th, 39th, 8th, 30th, 1st, 32nd. I mean, just really strong. And then 4 straight make cuts at the PGA Championship. All of those were top 35 or better finishes. He's coming in as the top 5 pick in the 95 mile as well. So really just strong across the board there for someone like Hideki Matsuyama. And really that is it for the AM split that I really like, that I really want to go out on my way to play or bet. You can obviously do some longer shot bets. I just don't really want to. Like if I was really just trying to trim down this week, it'd just be, all right, these 3 golfers are the best 3 for the AM side of it. You could go Jordan if you wanted to. You could go Rory. Obviously, I don't mind Rory as a pick. Ranks out top 10 as well. So you could easily fit in Rory there as well if you wanted to do that. But that's all I have for you guys for this video. Oh, actually, if you guys are still here, I did have some round 1 3-ball bets that I wanted to touch on here before we get out. So Taylor Gooch has a 42% chance to win his group, and there's a lot of really strong percent chances to win their groups in round 1. The way I like to do this is I like to use the round 1 fantasy projections and compare it to the players that they're going against, and this is where we get those projections from. So someone like Chris Kirk, who obviously does rank out pretty well in round 1 scoring, 42% chance for him to win his group. And I also do want to point out that a lot of these golfers that are in these groups are Euros as well. So the data is not as accurate, I guess, as it typically would be for weeks because we just don't really know what to expect from Euros. But typically speaking, the Euros do not play as well just coming over for a one-off start. So I do like this. Brian Harmon, 41% chance. Matt Kuchar, 41% chance. Sam Horsfield, 39%. And then Russell Henley, 40% chance to win their group. And this is one of those things where if you were just to bet like all the top or all the names of golfers that are most likely to win their 3-ball grouping, you would either push or make a profit in all of the last 5 weeks. So that is something I've been adding to the 9-to-5 write-up as well. And guys, just touch on the 9-to-5 write-up real quick. Man, that thing has been a beast lately. Really good deep dive, really setting the expectations for that week and highlighting why a golfer is a good pick and also why he could struggle as well. Knowing why is half the battle. And I also like to gauge the week for you guys in terms of, hey, is there a weather split? What's the lineup approach this week? And that's kind of the way last week where I felt like it was more of a studs and duds week that could have really benefited you if you went like JT and Xander. But that's all part of the process for the week is just highlighting the top picks each week. And then obviously the player pool, GPP, pretty much everything you need. I don't like to put in fluff to any of the content. And I think that's really beneficial. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a like and subscribe. And as always, let's keep cashing.